According to Surya Mantha, not having enough time is an excuse. Surya Mantha is a senior partner at Unitus Ventures. Surya has over 2 decades of experience spanning business operations, investing, and management consulting. He has leadership roles in startups as well as investment firms. At Unitus, Surya is responsible for all investment operations in India across Unitus focus sectors, including fintech, medtech, edtech, and employability throughout the entire life cycle of the portfolio. If you are a startup owner and you struggle with stress and sleep, you want to listen to this explosive conversation that I had with Surya Mantha. And recently, Fitbit released a report that 90% of Indians are sleep deprived, and India is the second most sleep deprived nation globally. This is pretty alarming, and a large part of this is within the startup space itself. Remember, Dalai Lama said that man sacrifices health to make money and then sacrifices money to restore health. Yet, sleep can be that superpower for you if you are in the startup world. Listen to my conversation with Surya and learn some actionable steps to improve your sleep, reduce your stress, and help you push your startup towards much more successful space.
Welcome to the Sleep Whisperer podcast. I'm your host, Deepa. Join me and my many expert guests and medical professionals from the cutting-edge science of functional medicine of the West and ancient wisdom of the East. Learn all about how to discover your root causes of poor sleep and understand the proper tools and techniques to end your confusion and begin getting a good night's sleep. It's time to regain hope and begin your sleep journey with the Sleep Whisperer podcast.
Welcome, Surya, to the Sleep Whisperer podcast. It's a pleasure having you today. And I know we are going to talk about the startup world and how sleep is a major issue there. But I do want to get started just introducing listeners to Surya, the person, and what is Surya, what brought Surya to where you are today. So maybe you could just lead us through from what actually got you interested in this world. Were you always fascinated in this world, or did you end up as a venture partner by fluke? So maybe we can just talk about your personal story first.
Sure.
And if there were any hardships, any moments of immense stress where you also lost sleep, but I do think that now your sleep is great, or perhaps it is. So how about we just talk about what brought you here? What were your interests even as a child, and what led you to where we are today?
Sure. So mine is not a very typical journey. I'm not, I'm over 55, so I'm not a typical startup guy. I'm a Telugu by birth, but was born and raised in Ranchi, then Bihar, now Jharkhand. And I went to college in Kanpur, went to IIT Kanpur, and got an undergrad degree in computer science. And like everybody at the time back in 85, made a beeline for the US. And at that time, forget about startups, even getting reasonably interesting jobs in India was not there weren't that many jobs available. So pretty much most people either went abroad for grad school or wrote the IIM entrance exam, which was not that big in those days, or wrote the IAS. I chose to do the first. And then in the US, At that time, getting a PhD was very fashionable. So all of us, so basically the point is that I must admit that the first decade of my career was probably it was following the herd. There was not a lot of thought put into, okay, is this what I want to do? I've been lucky that I have stumbled from one thing to another, and that has led to more interesting things. So probably there is a method to the madness, but I would be lying if I said that it's all a very well crafted plan, and I am where I am because I devised this strategy decades ago. No. So coming back to my story, I finished my PhD.
Was it financially challenging back then to go to US? Was it?
Of course it was. No, we all went, most of us, well, pretty much everybody went because they got a scholarship. There was no way that my father was an engineer with a public sector undertaking, quite well paid for those days. I mean, there wasn't the kind of private sector you have today. And we all had a decent middle class life, went to good schools and so on. But clearly nobody could afford to send their child to the US for grad school without any kind of scholarship. The most they could afford was pay for the plane ticket, right? So yeah, going without a tuition waiver plus an assistantship, whether it is a teaching assistantship or a research assistantship, was out of the question. Yeah. So
but, IIT back then also was very, very esteemed and very difficult to actually get into.
It always was, not like it's of course it's become orders of magnitude more difficult now because unfortunately in India the supply of high quality institutions has not kept up with the demand, right? So IITs were quite competitive and extremely prestigious back in the 80s as well, late 70s, early 80s, but it was not as almost lethal a rat race as it is now. So, I pretty much probably studied 2-3 hours a day. That's it. I used to come back from college.
But the fact that you actually got into IIT back then itself was some level of assurance towards a successful path.
I guess it was, but it was not really as big a deal as it is today. Nobody thought at the time that, hey, including parents, extended family, community, nobody said he's got into IIT, his or her life is made. It was not like that. It was like, hey, it's a great college, you're going to get a great education.
Okay.
And I was 17 and I got into IIT after class 11. We never thought about what was going to happen after you graduated. It was like, hey, I'm going to get out of Ranchi. I'm going to go into a hostel, right? And it's a cool college. It's a great college. And particularly in the case of IIT Kanpur, where I went, it was there was this whole halo around IIT Kanpur that it was built with American assistants and so on. It was like the coolest campus, even the best among IITs and so on. So nobody actually really thought more than that. No. Yeah. It has become really the pressure on kids and parents and everybody in the ecosystem today is so immense that and they have to work so hard today that by the time they get to whichever campus, whether it's an IIT or NIT, half of them have lost interest in academics. Half of them are burnt out, are tired, and they don't find the whatever major that they have selected or they've got into interesting enough to continue to be engaged. It was not like that back then. It was difficult. It was a challenging exam. Everybody prepared for it. But trust me, I mean, when I wrote the exam, we were the last 5-year batch. You could write the exam after 11th, you could write the exam after 12th as well. So half the kids were from 11th. We had just completed our 11th, wrote the exam, and somehow got in and were there. Half the kids had not even undergone any kind of coaching, right? Whether it is in person or postal or whatever, and quota and all these factories were decades away. So it was a very different kind of experience. And IITs back then were a lot smaller. You know, at our time, the entire 5-year strength of IIT Kanpur was about 1,000. Today, the yearly intake is more around 1,000. So there were small colleges at the time with a lot of focus on undergraduate teaching. It was very intimate. Student-faculty relationships were very informal.
Do you feel the quality? So the quality is, do you feel the quality change today?
They've become much bigger. They are now research universities. They have very big active research programs, very large master's, PhD programs. So the infrastructure is a lot better today. But there have been clearly some downsides as well. They're no longer the small, intimate colleges, and you don't get the kind of personalized attention we used to get from professors now. The class sizes are much bigger. It is much more impersonal. Everything is big. They're like big universities today. Right?
So
that is not the case.
Okay, so let's come back to your story. What happened to you after you?
Yeah, so I I got a PhD in computer science. I worked at Xerox Research in Rochester, New York, and then there was I was so far away from the world of business and economics and so on that when I was a graduate student back in 1987, in October of 1987, there was a big financial Wall Street crash. It was called the Black Monday. And at that point, it was so funny. I didn't know whether Dow Jones going up was good or going down was good. So that was the extent of my ignorance of anything having to do with finance or business or anything. So when after I completed my PhD and joined Xerox Research as a full-time member of research staff, this was in the early 90s, there was a huge crisis in the research environment in the US. That's when AT&T Bell Labs went belly up, IBM, TJ Watson, Yorktown Heights laid off, hundreds and downsized significantly. And there was a lot of pressure on corporate research budgets in America. So at that time, I decided, okay, it may not be a bad idea to really understand what the hell all this business is all about. And so I enrolled for an MBA from fortunately, I lived in Rochester, New York, which at that time had among the top 20 business schools called, at the University of Rochester, the Simon School of Business. And, Xerox was paying for it. So I said, hey, I don't need to shell out any dough for this. So I went for that. Though my wife, till this day, it says that I should have actually quit Xerox and gone to Harvard instead. But that's a moot point. I said, at that time, I didn't feel like giving up my research job. So I got an MBA. And then I had the choice of getting into Wall Street in New York or going into management consulting, because I wanted to apply my MBA and see what the hell all this is about.
So what was considered ideal back then? Which
both were very lucrative. Both were very interesting options then. Entrepreneurship was not as big a deal at that time because the internet boom, the .com boom was still about 3 years away, 2 years away, I would say. So I chose management consulting over Wall Street for the simple reason that there was an interviewing team from Goldman Sachs. And one of the guys said very proudly that, they put in 36-hour days. And I said, okay, that's not for me. I said, okay, so that leaves consulting, which is great. I'm quite happy I chose that because I got to work with a pretty great bunch of guys. It's a niche firm called PRTM. It was a technology-oriented management consulting firm with a lot of did great work in strategy, product development, supply chain, and so on, with global tech companies like Lucent, Xerox, IBM, Seagate, and SAP, and so on. Then 9/11 happened. Of course, in this journey, I also got married. We had a 4-year-old. We had a child, a son, and then 9/11 happened. And I was a consultant at that time. I was a principal at PRTM. And clearly, travel and all of that was out after that. I had a 4-year-old, and my wife said this is not the best career to be, out every week on the road. And that was my first foray into digital media. I joined RealNetworks in Seattle. RealNetworks was a bit of a pioneer in digital media. They were the ones who, created the first digital media format, player, server, all of that. You're probably too young for all of that. So I was with them for 3.5 years in various tech and marketing roles. And in 2005, when our son was 10, we had a big decision to make. Both my wife Vani and I were never quite comfortable with the idea of growing old in the US. We had already lived there 20 years, and we had a son who was 10. And so we had to make a choice. I mean, if he grew any older, it would not be fair to him to, uproot him from America and bring him back here. So in 2005, we decided to come back and relocate rather to India. And when I was looking at offers, I had a ton of offers which would put me on a plane and send me back to the US again. I said, hey, that doesn't work. I mean, if I have to work in the US, then I'd much rather live here as opposed to living in Bangalore and then taking a flight every other month or every month and to be back in the US. And I also wanted to work for understand the Indian market. I had never worked. I left India when I was 22. I was born and raised on a public sector, undertaking campus, HEC in Ranchi, right? It was a very sophisticated, very cosmopolitan colony with people from all over the country, all educated engineers, the best of the best, and so on. And after that, I was in Kanpur, IIT, for 5 years, which was again a very protected, artificial sort of atmosphere. So my dad at the time said, this is the first time you're actually coming into and living in India. So far, you have not really lived in India. You lived in very protected, cocooned surroundings, both in HEC Ranchi as well as IITK. So 2005, I first came to India, and I wanted to work for an Indian company.
So was that Bangalore?
No, that was Chennai, in a company called Sify, which was focused on the Indian. So I led their consumer internet business, which they had bought from India World. So I wanted to understand the Indian consumer market. I wanted to work for an Indian company and get soaked into the Indian ethos. There were a lot of people who were coming back, many of my friends who said, hey, I'm just going to go move back to Hyderabad and Bangalore, but I want to be focused on the US market. I want to work for companies that are working for there's nothing wrong with that choice. It was just not me. For me, it was like, I really want to understand India, which is changing at a rapid pace. So I was there at Sify in Chennai I also, at the time, everybody wanted to move to Bangalore, and it was a bit of or Hyderabad, and my choice was a bit unorthodox to move to Madras. So after a little over a year, I was called by Raghav Bahal, who's the founder of TV18, CNBC TV18. He wanted to collect all his new media assets, moneycontrol.com, IBN Live, and a bunch of Cricket Next and a bunch of other properties, his mobile business and so on, and put them under one roof called Web 18. It was essentially Network 18's TV 18 at that time. It was not yet rechristened Network 18. Internet and mobile business, and he wanted to take it public on the NASDAQ. So I was the founding CEO of Web 18, and it was a startup. It was a startup with fledgling businesses, and that was so we moved to Bombay. That was a great.
Was startups back then as stressful as they are today?
Yeah, I mean, the whole nature of that is the nature of the business, right? I mean, you are trying to grow very fast. You're trying to prove your value proposition. And in our case, we've had great ambitions to be listed on the NASDAQ stock market. So it was a very intense time from 2006 to early 2010. And actually, we grew the business fourfold, 3.5 times. We brought it to EBITDA profitability. In fact, we even filed. We had bankers, UBS and Nomura and so on. We had filed with the SEC in the US, but then the whole financial crisis happened. The financial crisis happened, and that sort of shelved all our plans to go public on the NASDAQ. Otherwise, it is very likely that Web 18 would have gone public back then, back in late 2007, early 2008, mid 2008. So that was a bit of a bummer. We were all, the founding team were really looking forward to it, but that was a terrific journey, I would say. Taking the core offering, which was money control and IBM Live, building a set of new properties, growing revenues from 15 crores to 75 crores, bringing it to EBITDA profitability, hiring teams, starting new products. It was a very intense time. And then working with bankers, working with lawyers, working to put together all the documentation, all the due diligence and all of that to file with the SEC. So extremely intense. But I realized at that time that I actually thrived in that kind of a setting. That I never really enjoyed working for large corporations. It was only my first job after my PhD that I was with a large corporation, which was Xerox. After that, PRTM was a challenger consulting firm to the big boys like McKinsey and BCG and so on. We were a niche consulting firm. In fact, it was probably one of the most profitable firms in the US at the time, and a very low profile, under the radar screen kind of firm. Then I joined RealNetworks, which at that time was competing, which was in a life and death battle with Microsoft it was the David to the Goliath from Microsoft in the media wars back, right? Then I came back to India rather than working for some large multinational corporation. I chose an Indian company, and then again I went into a startup. So I've always wanted to be on the side of the David in the David versus Goliath. And
so did you ever find in any of these periods where was your stress the highest? Even if you thrived on it, did you ever disrupt your sleep? Was it unnatural sleeping patterns, lack of sleep, insomnia, some of the regular thing? Because when adrenaline goes higher up in high stress, then typically sleep starts to drop. And that's there's this whole HPA axis where you'll feel that buzz of adrenaline, and that's actually what drives you in that ambitious rat race. But its counter effect is that it disrupts sleep.
True. Now, fortunately, you may not like this answer, but till about a few months back, I would say 7-8 months back, I have always slept like a baby.
That's
That
excellent. Why would
that
I
is a
not like that
no,
answer?
because
I
I
want that
and
answer.
I'm worried that why this it has changed, because I have all been in very stressful jobs.
Yeah.
Ever after, since coming from India, coming back from the US in India, all my roles have been very intense, and I'm the sort of person who's always on. In fact, my wife and family complain all the time that I'm always responding to emails, and that's me, that's my style, I'm always on. And
Yes.
now in a small partnership like Unitus Ventures, when I communicate with my partners, I expect a response within half an hour, and so I do the same. So, but I have been fortunate to actually be blessed with good sleep. And
But that's great, because then you're the right person to be talking to in the whole context of startups and sleep.
right,
Because if there was somebody who was suffering with terrible sleep, they wouldn't really be able to. So it's great that you've had good sleep, because then you'll able to actually think into minds of startups and then make the recommendations which will support them.
right.
So actually, it's common in the startup world to wear stress and poor sleep like a badge of honor. And I see this multiple times where it's almost considered cool to say I have high stress. And I think it also becomes an excuse for poor choices in food and lifestyle, because then it becomes that I have stress, so I need alcohol every night to
Right.
sleep. So, and the Dalai Lama always says that man always looks at ruining health to get money, and then he has to let go of all that money in trying to restore his health. So in terms of this whole aspect of, do you see startups today wearing this stress and poor sleep like this badge of honor? Are there some
No,
stories
no,
you?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Actually, you're making excellent points. So let me tell you a little about my habits, right? I mean, obviously, like any teenager or a young guy in his 20s. Yeah, I mean, I've smoked, I've drunk, and been drunk, been pissed drunk in college and grad school and so on. Absolutely. It was quite regular to have a 12 pack every Friday night. At least 12 years, right? So yeah, we've all done that, right? But there was a time I was never a very strong person physically, ever. Never a good sports guy. I mean, I was always a nerd and a geek, always standing first in class and all of that kind of crap. But in 91 December, I took a New Year resolution that I would quit smoking. Not that I was a heavy smoker. I
Yes.
probably smoked maybe 6, 7, 8 a day at max when I was in grad school and the last years of college and so on. And that was my last cigarette. So December 31st, 1991. I haven't smoked after that, and I'm proud of that. That right. And also we decided that when I got married, that we would not keep alcohol on a regular basis at home. If we had a party, we had to get beer or wine or whiskey or whatever, we'd go and get it. But on a regular basis, we won't have a bar at home, right? This was very important because particularly when we came back to India, when we were in Bombay, our son went to Cathedral, which is one of the better known schools in Bombay. It is in South Bombay, and it comes with its own all kinds of issues of very rich and highly successful and motivated people, but also they come with very bad habits. They are high achievers and they abuse their bodies, right? And they're partying every weekend, they're drinking, doing drugs, going to Goa and so on. And we could not tell our son that do as we say, not as we do. So it was very important for us to set an
Yeah.
example, right?
Right.
So no alcohol except when you go out, have a glass of wine when you're at dinner or something, or have a beer. That's fine, but no alcohol on a regular basis at home. no smoking. And took, both my wife and I take pretty good care of our health. So exercise, supplements, I stumbled upon Vipassana back in 2011. I was very fortunate, but I have given it up for some reason. I have to get back to it, but I'm not able to get back to it. I somehow stumbled into Vipassana 2011, and I consider myself really, really fortunate. I have done about 3 sessions, 2 10-day sessions and 1 3-day session.
So what did Vipassana do for you physiologically?
It relaxes you. Vipassana is a form of meditation which is so intense, and I find.
So did you actually have to go stay there and
Yes.
do this?
Oh yeah, I have done two 10-day retreats and 1 3-day retreat.
Because I've heard that you don't speak for 10 days and you're with yourself and with your breath.
Yes. So and Vipassana is also conceptually and theoretically very profound. So that was the one system I have found that I could relate to even intellectually.
But do you think startups today can actually do this? Do you think they've got the luxury of time to take off and do something like Vipassana? Maybe
I would strongly recommend. I would strongly recommend that startup founders and startup senior guys do it, right? Along with and honestly, I must admit that I did it for a few years. After that, I gave it up, and I'm having a lot of trouble getting back to it. I know I have to, but it's been difficult. But I think what is
difficult? Is it lack of time? What is stopping you from actually doing that?
That is a good question. That's a good question. Time is certainly one, but I think there are some other mental barriers in my own mind.
It's a common thing for startup owners to you even today. I'm asking you this in terms of others, but it's common for startup owners to say, hey, I don't have the luxury of time to be helping myself. And this is something that is very commonly heard. And I actually don't buy that, because I think however busy you are, you can afford to bring in some small practice which will actually support you.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I think that not having time is an excuse, right? So see, when you are working very hard and you have, there is a lot of stress on performance, right? Particularly in a startup situation where you have so many stakeholders that you are responsible to, your employees, your investors, the market, and you're racing against time. The most important things, these are table stakes, is substance abuse.
Right.
Tobacco, alcohol,
drugs.
Right? Drugs, a complete no-no. There is no redeeming, apart from, say, maybe having a glass of wine and having dinner.
Right.
Different.
I think your thing of not having alcohol in the house at all and going to buy it just for an occasion, that's a great actionable step which many people can actually do.
Right. And see, health, you have to want to be healthy.
Right. Intention matters.
Intention matters a lot. If you do not want to be healthy, you will find all manner of excuses, right? Okay. I have been fortunate enough to have reasonably good health. Fine, I was never very strong physically, and once in a while, I really need to work on my lung capacity. But otherwise, I have not had serious issues, right? Whereas I know my wife had some issues, but I really admire her for her discipline and her desire to want to be healthy and take the steps to do that. And she's been an inspiration. I do that because I see her. Right. I do the same in terms of eating healthy, right? In terms of everybody says, I have my brother-in-law is a biochemist. Uh, and he gives me good advice. Everybody says, that supplements are useless. You need to have a balanced diet. But hey, the fact of the matter is, how many of us are gonna, on a
Exactly.
regular basis, eat walnuts, salmon, tayar sadam, all the
I
veggies,
agree.
eggs,
No,
right?
Surya, one more thing, how I describe supplements to clients is that I break it up. They are supportive elements. They are not going to outsmart a horrible diet. But when
Yes,
you have a great diet in place, they actually top that up to a point. And our soil has become so deficient that even the best sources
exactly,
of food is not going to give you trace minerals. So I
exactly.
think they need to be topping up an excellent diet. But then again, the caveat is that a lot of people, they feel they can eat processed food every day, and then those few supplements is going to outsmart that. That doesn't
I
happen.
agree with you. Yeah.
It is a marriage between the two.
Yeah, you need to
So
have a healthy diet. And fortunately, we in fact we don't eat any processed food. Literally, we
right.
don't eat any processed food, right? But supplements, even if the absorption is 20%, 30%, that is 20-30% more than I would be getting on a regular
Exactly.
basis, right?
Absolutely. I agree
So
with you
so
totally.
I am a strong believer in those, whether it is vitamin and exercise. I exercise on a regular basis. So if I exercise, I'm over 55, I am putting pressure on my joints and body, I will take a CoQ10, I will take MSM,
Yes.
right? So yeah,
So
so I do. So health is very, very important. If you take care of your physical health, then you can deal with some amount of job related stress or emotional battering or whatever, but only a certain amount.
absolutely. So, would you feel that it's because you have a good diet, you take supplements, you exercise, they all play a role in why you haven't disrupted sleep in spite of a stressful job?
I think that has a role to play in it, though I must admit that the last 6-8 months
You
my sleep
haven't.
has got impacted. I don't know why. I'm still struggling with that. There are, and I'm a little unhappy because that was never the case. I have never had sleep. Fall asleep within 5 minutes and get good 8 hours of sleep. In fact, I can go on for another couple of hours. But so I was blessed with good sleep. And I'm not the sort. Anybody who says that I can do with less sleep are 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 kidding themselves, are kidding
Right.
themselves. Because
Yes.
I know if I do not get, and I'm the sort where I'm very, very anal about this. If I don't sleep the night, next day, I'm not going to be a hero and go to work and
That's
try to do my best. I'll go to
important.
work
I
and take a
think
nap.
that's where, but that's where startups don't follow. So if they don't have sleep, they're going to pump themselves with caffeine and sugar and get themselves going. But
Exactly.
Fitbit recently did a research which said that 90% of Indians have poor sleep, and we are the second nation after Japan with poor quality health and sleep, and this is very alarming. So, when it comes to startups, do you feel that it's necessary for them to push themselves at the cost of sleep? Is it
No, I don't
that
think so. It's a
there is
false
no
choice.
other way?
It's a totally false choice.
Right.
I don't believe at all that you have to sacrifice sleep and health for better performance at work. I think that is
Because
just
I've heard a common thing that I hear is that there's a lot of anxiety, and when I gave a talk at a startup, a media house, all the people said when asked about sleep, they said they wake up in the middle of the night with anxiety about everything, anxiety about their business, their venture capitalists, everything. And waking up in the night at 2 a.m. with anxiety is usually a sign that physiologically that you've eaten a high sugar meal and then it drops in the middle of the night. So it spikes cortisol, which raises anxiety. So I honestly feel that they're just having poor quality food and lifestyle choices, which is spiking that. And it's also common for startups to tell me that you don't understand what it's like to be in that firefighting zone. And I've always found that when I focus on all these core aspects of good choices in food, keeping sugar low, you can actually get through all of that pretty safely. So I disagree, but this is a common thing that I hear, that they get anxiety. So have you ever faced something like anxiety in stressful situations? Do you find startup owners talking to you ever about this? Do you relate to it? What
Of course,
is your
no,
opinion
no.
about?
Of course, I mean everything you say I relate to, and I do believe. I mean, I feel anxiety, and often,
What
and
does anxiety look like for you?
anxiety uh, gets translated into getting up earlier than I would normally.
Hmm.
So if I would normally get up at 6:30, between 6:30 and 7, then anxiety would mean I get up, I lose sleep at around 4:30, and then I'm tossing and turning something, right? So I get up not feeling rested, not feeling I've got enough sleep. But
So
in
are
my
you
case, what
able
I will
to
do,
handle it?
yeah, no. So what I will do, I will not let that. So I have basically tapped into a little bit of the reservoir of health I have. I will replenish that. That day afternoon, I'll go take a nap.
Hmm.
I'll replenish that.
So you
See,
don't feel that, a common thing in sleep is circadian rhythm. And Ayurveda, as you know, for centuries has spoken about how disrupting it is to take a nap during the day. So it can actually switch the cycle and make somebody lose.
I'm
But
not so convinced. I know my wife, because we are also big followers of Ayurveda, and my
yes,
Ayurvedic doctor has told me several times not to take a nap in the afternoon. But I find that if I haven't slept well, if I take a
exactly.
1 hour or 2 hour nap, I feel refreshed.
And that doesn't disrupt your sleep
No, it
at
doesn't.
night.
There,
So
if
that's
I
excellent.
if I sleep, if I go and have a sleep for 4 hours, if after a heavy lunch at 1 o'clock I hit the pillows and get up at 5, then obviously I will not be able to sleep the night. But
So when do you catch a nap?
then it will be like 1 hour. 1 hour is the is if
Do
one
you
hour
do
of good
that
sleep
before lunch or after lunch?
after lunch, but a little bit after lunch. So if you had lunch at 1:30, 1 o'clock, and maybe at 3 o'clock, 2:33. Give about an hour between the lunch and the nap, right?
That's a great
Uh,
recommendation. Also, although I must add that you are probably your hello.
yeah, I can.
Yeah.
You're breaking up. Yeah.
Yeah, you are probably lucky in that, but there are people who, once they sleep in the afternoon, they can't sleep again at night.
Hmm. Even a short nap, even like a half an hour to hour refreshing nap.
Yeah, so they lose sleep for the next 4 to 5 days.
Oh my God. Okay, then that fortunately it's not been like that for me. But I have to say, and that in the last 6 7 months, my sleep quality has deteriorated. I'm a bit worried about that, because till then, even in spite of the most stressful situations, I was blessed to get good sleep, and I think a lot of that to exercise, good diet, and lack of substance abuse. I think, as you rightly said, the younger folks, because they think that, okay, I'm going to be immortal.
Yes.
And also they think that I'm going to work really, really hard now, make $1 billion and then take it easy. So what they do is that they're burning the candle at both ends. And in order to sustain this unsustainable sort of life, they take stimulants like tobacco, alcohol, drugs, and then they are eating these spiky foods, right? They're ordering from Swiggy, eating all manner of, sugars and carbs and pizzas and things like that. I mean, the other thing, we rarely eat out. Very
Yes,
rarely
I
eat
think
out.
that
Both my wife
plays
and
a
I.
big role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but then maybe I don't know if kids in there. The other disturbing thing that I've found is that I can imagine single guys over or women saying, okay, I'll order out maybe once or twice a week. But today in India, even families have stopped cooking.
Right. It's a
Right?
perpetual ordering out,
Yeah.
and
And
yeah.
and the quality of ingredients in food outside, it doesn't matter where you get it from. The
Exactly.
most expensive 5-star restaurant
They're
with
all
a
cutting
hole in the
corners.
wall, everybody is cutting corners, and the
Yes.
quality of food that you get from outside, it's like poison. It is nothing more than
Absolutely.
that. So please
Yeah.
think about it. Cigarette, tobacco, alcohol, poison for food, then whatever Red Bull and all other kinds of stimulants, and
Stimulants.
no
Yes.
exercise.
Yes.
Why are you blaming your work?
Exactly. So let's just say that there is somebody who's got a startup and he's struggling with the stress of managing his venture funding and his actually putting everything together. How should his day typically look like, and what should he or she be doing so that they minimize the impact of stress and they don't impact their sleep?
See, one of the things that I mean, I do. I'm not suggesting that for everybody. Is that I make a list of things to do, right? To constantly
Yeah.
remind myself so that I don't forget. And I use pen and paper because that is very relaxing. So I have a diary where almost every week I have a things to do for home, things to do for work. And I may not have completed all
So
the
that's
tasks.
something like journaling. So this is
Yeah,
something like journaling. So yeah,
yeah. Something like journaling, it is very relaxing. It slows you down. You sit and think about, okay,
yes,
what are the things I have to do, right? So, and it could well be that, in fact, the things from last week, half of them have not been completed, but I will write them down again.
right.
That this is a routine that helps me a lot to figure out, okay, these are the things to be done, and then even whether it and prioritize, right? I in my work, for instance, while at home, I mean, on the home front, a lot of things have to get done. At work, at any given point in time, particularly if you're a business leader, there are 2 or 3 things that are the most critical, that move the meter, whether it comes to
Yeah,
your meeting revenue goals or meeting investor expectations or raising funding or whatever. There is a handful of just three, maximum 3 or 4 variables that you should be worried about personally. And then startup guys need to learn to delegate. If you are going to do everything yourself, you won't do anything well.
is that possible all the time?
It is, if you have a good team. If you have a
Hmm.
good team, it is possible to. You need to have the confidence in your colleagues, whether it is your co-founders or whether it is other people on the team, to be able to deliver. but you need to verify.
Usually, I think the research which has led to our understanding of circadian rhythm has been done on these shift workers. And typically, if somebody is working that way for a very long time, then the solution is to create their own circadian rhythm. So to behave as if the whole night is their day, and then behave as if the whole day is their night, and just at least to bring in some routine to that.
Correct. But I think you hit upon it. The key is putting together a routine.
Yes.
See, man or woman is a creature of habit.
Correct.
And if you are able to set some kind of routine, right, in eating, in sleeping, in exercising, in all of that, then the routine helps. Routine is relaxing. Yes. And startup guys, I think that they all think that they're heroes, and that every day is different. Tomorrow is different from today, and the day after is going to be different from tomorrow. That can be that can have a lot of impact on your health and well-being. It scrambles the mind, the brain.
So would you say that would be your top recommendation to startup owners to improve sleep, is to just bring in routine?
I think routine is very critical. I've been honest, but I've been trying all kinds of things. For a while, my sleep, I think it has to do with the lockdown as well. We're all been at home for now almost 3 months.
Yeah.
And that's having impact as well. But all these things, right? Eating healthy, exercising, no substance abuse, keeping a journal of things to do, not doesn't have to be a creative journal. And then for me, things to do and then being able to check them off.
Right.
That huge satisfaction. I don't know what it is, but writing and saying, okay.
There is something to that, Surya. So, usually there's something to making your bed in the morning, and it's said that when you start your day, just putting the cover on your bed, it releases dopamine in the brain where you feel that you've achieved something. Therefore, the rest of your day goes on a path where you feel motivated to do things.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I 100% believe that. In fact, I do that without fail.
Yes.
Folding my clothes. I love to fold clothes.
I think you will be
it relaxes me.
Many women would love to have had you in their house, because they would probably hate to do that. But we are almost out of time. I'm going to ask you 2 final questions. There are about 100 million people with diagnosed sleep disorders today in the world. And so if we don't count who's not diagnosed, that's a whole lot more. So what do you feel is the biggest root cause of poor sleep?
I think just a modern lifestyle and bad food. Modern lifestyle, in one word, is modern lifestyle, which encompasses everything.
So just getting back to some of what our ancestors were doing would be the solution to
And the other thing, modern lifestyle, the other thing is I used to suffer from this, and now I don't. Is the need for new, exciting experiences.
Right.
So which and it's okay to for life to be a little simple. Every evening does not have to be exciting.
That's more even keel.
Even keel, right? And the other thing that is very important, I feel, is that beyond work, you need to have something else that you do, which
what is that something for you?
For me, I started, I used to be a reasonably good singer, but I never learned classic music formally. And as an adult, when I was in Seattle, I learned Drupad for a couple of years. That is, it's a form of Hindustani classical music. But I realized so that sustained me for a while, but Drupad is a very difficult style of singing, and I realized it was too late in life to learn that. But now, for the last 3-4 years, I've picked up physics. So I read, I study.
Nice. I
You
think
need
the
to have,
more
you
you
need to
learn,
have
absolutely.
something.
And you
And
have to keep learning is one of the great ways that the brain remains healthy.
Exactly.
It doesn't degenerate.
Right. And it should not be, and I have a bad habit, I'll tell you. Doing something that requires attention, that requires care, and that is not so easy. Whatever it is, physics is something you could learn how to play the piano. You could learn how to play the tabla. You could become, really great at knitting, right?
Right.
The bad habits that I know I have, and a lot of people today have, is this surfing.
Yes.
Right? As opposed to reading long form books, everybody likes to surf on the net and read bite-sized articles. I'm on Facebook all the time.
Yeah.
Reading articles, reading that, Washington Post, New York Times, Indian Express, Vanity Fair, this, that, right?
And that's all stimulants. It's
all stimulants. And I have realized, I know it makes me nervous.
And that's not going to allow anybody to slow down their mind and is not conducive to sleep at all.
Yeah.
So you've lost your sleep for the day if you're spiking it with that stimulation.
Yeah.
But
fortunately, I have a wife who's at the other end of the spectrum. She has no time for current affairs. The only thing she reads are novels and fiction. So she's sort of a pole star for me for good behaviors that I aspire to. Some of it rubs off, but given my nature, I'm a very restless sort of guy. So
Surya, you are sounding more and more like everybody's ideal husband.
No, you have to hear her. You have to hear her version of me.
But on the Sleep Whisperer podcast, I like to have everybody complete my mantra, which is, if sleep is the new medicine, then. Can you complete that sentence?
If sleep is, I would say sleep has always been the only medicine, the first medicine.
Yes.
Without sleep, there is nothing else. It is that important. Literally that important.
And it's cheap. You don't have to pay anybody to do it.
Yeah.
And I don't know why enough people are not using it as a tool for supporting their health.
Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed the show. Just a reminder that this podcast is for information purposes only. This is not a substitute for professional care by a doctor or otherwise qualified health professional. This information is provided on the understanding that it does not constitute medical or other professional advice or services. If you are looking for personal help on your health journey, do seek out a medical practitioner. Please do make your own healthcare decisions based upon your research and in partnership with your doctor or otherwise qualified healthcare professional. It is in no way intended as medical advice, as a substitute for medical counseling, or as treatment or cure for any particular health condition. Be sure to always work directly with a qualified health practitioner before making any changes to your diet or lifestyle that may feel out of your realm of comfort or understanding. If you are looking for an allied functional medicine practitioner, do seek out more information on www.phytothrive.com or www.sleepwhisperer.pro. It is important that you have someone who is qualified and understands your health personally in order to provide adequate care, especially when it comes to chronic health conditions.